Action!
Are you going to cut that part out?
No. Greetings all, and welcome to Dave's Craft Room. And on today's video, back by overwhelmingly popular demand, make some commotion for Dave's Craft Mom! On today's video, we're going to be doing a trunk show of vintage, antique, family heirloom quilts, and this one. This one is not of any vintage, but we're going to start with it.
I don't know how old it has to be vintage, but I don't think this counts.
Probably the year shouldn't start with a 2, hopefully. Probably it should at least come from the 1900s. So we're going to show off my mom's quilts that come from her family, one from my dad's family. The last time Dave's Craft Mom was on here, people in the comments were like, you didn't even tell us her name. Well, I'm not going to say her name because
her name is Mom.
Her name is Dave's Craft Mom. I'm not going to give away too much of my family information, so we're not going to say proper nouns in the video. We're going to start with this quilt, and the reason is everyone always wants to know, how did I get involved in quilting in the first place?
Is this it?
I guess this is the original reason.
Oh.
This was the t-shirt quilt that she made for me.
That got a thumbs down.
It didn't get a thumbs down. I just didn't like the t-shirts themselves because I didn't have good memories from these times.
Yeah.
So therefore...
I think you also didn't like the backing.
And I don't like anything that I didn't pick.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And you did not ask me to pick it. So therefore that I didn't use it. But then cut to like 10 years later, then I had a pile of t-shirts that I did like. And I wanted a t-shirt quilt. And you didn't want to make it.
I really didn't want to make it. I was going to make it, but I didn't want to make it.
So I just decided to make it myself. So this is the first quilt. I mean, it just is what it is. But now, don't you actually use this quilt to show prospective clients?
Well, I don't know about clients, friends. Because I just do it for friends. Friends and family.
You do it actually for friends and family of friends and family, I feel like.
Yeah, maybe. So, moving on?
Yeah, that's it.
Or do you have questions?
Yeah, I forgot to do a tongue pop transition. We should have been like, and it changes.
Oh.
So this is the first quilt that we're going to show. And this is a Crazy Quilt from the 1800s, isn't it?
I think that's what the card says. You're going to have to read the card because...
It has a card here.
My memory is rubbish.
Yeah, it says 1860s. I'm reading this verbatim. This quilt is a family heirloom. It was given to...
my grandpa's name.
By his great-great aunt with the story that it was brought from Old Virginia. Mr. and Mrs. blank blank. And then this says...
my grandparents' names.
This was from in the olden days when they used to make this kind of crazy quilt. And often... when I've seen these, they have lots of crazy embroidery stitches on it.
Usually every single one is a different stitch.
Yeah, or there's loads
at least,
of different.
10 or 20 or 30 stitches.
In this case, this person only just knew one stitch.
But they did a good job at it.
The stitches on this are so even. It honestly looks like machine.
It does.
But it's definitely not. So we can see here that this is a block about this size. Probably, didn't we say that it was probably feed sack as a foundation? I think we looked at some and found like...
maybe some of them are. This one is interesting. Look at this. We didn't notice that before. See, it has stitches, so yeah. They took it off of something else.
Yeah, so...
maybe. I don't know. They probably used whatever they had. See, this is different.
These chunks of like silks and satins were appliqued on by hand. I think the edges were turned under.
Yes, you can see this one's turned under.
And then they were just kind of butted up against each other and fastened together with that same stitch again. The fabrics are all deteriorating.
Every time you open it, you're going to find little pieces.
Yeah. Once I inherit this quilt, I'm going to have a frame built. And I'm going to have it sandwiched between glass. And that's going to be the solution. But also, this backing that's on here is obviously not contemporary to the time that the quilt top was made.
I don't think so.
This was
or
obviously
this,
made.
for that matter.
I think this was old.
I mean, it's not. It's in really good shape compared to the rest of it. So
She thinks that it was added on by machine later, and I think it was added on by hand. Also later in time, because it doesn't match the age. This backing does not match the age of it at all. A lot of fabric in those days had like nickel in it because it made the colors vibrate, but then that kind of any fabric with nickel in it completely deteriorated like that.
Yeah. This one's gone.
I thought some of
This
these
one's
might
gone.
be.
Here you can see the.
Yeah, you can see the edge of that.
Some of them are in still really good shape.
Yeah, because some of the fabrics probably didn't have the nickel in them. This is the edge. You don't see an edge like this too often.
Yeah, this is very strange.
Matter of fact, I don't even know how they did this.
You know what? It is done by hand. See that? It's very, very different. I've never seen a binding or an edge.
The person who made this put a lot of these like fan shapes into it.
Yeah, there's one here.
And here. How did you come into possession of this quilt?
My grandmother gave it to me.
Your mom's
She said,
mom.
"Here, take care of this. It's from my her third husband's family."
Her third husband's family, which is interesting because that would not be a blood relation to us.
Mm-mm. But he never had any children.
Her second husband was your blood grandfather.
Yes.
He died and she remarried.
Right. And they were in their 50s and 60s by the 50s or 60s by then. I think 50s.
So this actually was the family of your step grandfather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they didn't have any children. And, you know, I'm guessing the great aunt who gave it to him, I suppose she gave it to him because she didn't have anyone else to give it to. So.
And it's from the 1860s. I mean, you're just holding on to it, aren't you? Because there's nothing you can really do with it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't display it. You can't put it on a bed. You can't use it.
You can display it. You have to have a frame built.
Yeah, that's not happening.
And it would probably cost like at least $1,000.
And take up an entire wall.
Yeah, so that's something I would do. This is something you would probably do.
Yeah.
But
it's very cool, though, to look at. And I've taken it a couple of times to show it to people and brought it out, but that's it.
Yeah. Well, that's probably fine. It should probably just stay.
So let's not scoop this one off the table.
Well, I wanted to do this one first to get out of the way, because the other ones are not nearly as fragile.
Yeah.
So let's get this out of here.
Yeah, let's.
Okay, so here we have a log cabin quilt. Very vintage. Who made this?
So this was made by my grandmother on my dad's side, by her either mother or grandmother. I can't remember when she told me. I feel like she told me her mother made it, but I don't know.
This is absolutely the kind of thing that Chris O'Neill would love. This is very vintage. Like, look at the fabrics. They're so like...
We think they're 30s or 40s.
Yeah. These are foundation pieced by hand.
Yeah, there's a place somewhere where we could see it. I can't remember
there's
where.
A couple
Maybe
places.
Here?
Yeah, so they're pieced onto a foundation. The most classic, quintessential way to do a log cabin is to have the center red.
Yep, because that's the hearth, that's the heart of the home, that's the fireplace.
Which it is here. And then on many of these blocks, some of the little stripped pieces are pieced.
Yep.
Which is cool. What did you say the batting was made out of?
Wool.
And then it's tied.
It's tied, which is strange.
I think it's strange. Why do you think it's strange?
I don't know. I don't really like a tied quilt.
It seems
but
a little bit
unfinished. It's all sort of like maybe not flat, so maybe it wasn't possible to quilt it.
But I feel like the quilting would have made it flat, and I feel like it's not flat because it's tied. If it would have been quilted. Maybe
it's not wool, because if it was wool, this tying would not be close enough to keep that.
I'm saying it's not close enough. And also a lot of the time, oh, look at this lump right here. That is a huge lump.
That's a big lump.
Yeah,
and
so
it's empty here.
The person tied it, whoever tied it, that was not necessarily a wise choice that they made. They probably thought they could get away with it because they didn't want to quilt it. And you know what else? This feels like very warm. Maybe they just needed to get it done so they could use it for the winter.
Yeah.
And it's got a red edge that it's literally just raw edge. It's just literally...
This has the selvages.
Yeah, it's
I don't know
the
if it's like that all the way around,
it's
but
the edge of the fabric. It's not tucked in at all.
yeah.
No
And the
binding.
borders are only on the sides.
Yeah, there's 2 borders on the side that's red.
Otherwise, it would be too skinny and long.
What kind of string is this that it's tied with?
It's crewel embroidery. Crewel.
Not only the ties were a
I'm not
strange
sure.
choice, whoever tied it did not even put them at even intervals at all. They're so random. It seems a little bit like a rush job on getting it done. Maybe it was like getting to be October in the prairie and they were cold. So
I mean,
it was
look,
like, just
I have
finish
all
it.
kinds of flimsies. This could have been a flimsy for a really long time, and finally somebody was like, hey, let's tie this sucker because we're not going to quilt it.
Well, it must have been a time before you could go ahead and buy batting, right? Or could you? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
We did actually peek inside and feel that there was a hole somewhere. And also the back is ripped and repaired in many places.
Yeah. There's a really bad one on the other corner.
Yeah, this I feel like is definitely something Chris O'Neill would like. She's also done quilts like this before.
Yeah.
And the lesson that she would probably say is think twice before you tie it. Think about whether the batting will hold up with just ties alone, because this batting would not. But then again, it's like 100 years old, so maybe it held up for decades as they used it, and it's only...
I mean, it's not like all the batting is down at one end. There is still batting in most places.
It is so lumpy. Like there's
But
none here and a lot here.
if you slept under this, you'd be warm. And that's the point of a
Sure.
quilt. I like a log cabin. I know you are not the biggest fan of log cabins, but I like log cabins.
No, I like a vintage log cabin quilt. I don't really see myself making a log cabin quilt just because it's been done.
But there's a lot of ways to set these light and dark. You know, you can make so many different patterns, stars and stair steps. And
I like this log cabin.
it's pretty cool.
And this is also, I mean, this is a scrap quilt for sure.
Yeah.
This is a crazy quilt. Scrap.
It is,
a
but
controlled
like
crazy quilt.
you can see where fabrics were used. You know, they had more of something.
And
I would like to get it appraised because somebody could tell you how old it was based on how old the fabrics are. I think it's in pretty good shape. Most of these fabrics are still here. Like the last one, there were quite a few places where the fabric was just completely gone.
yeah, so on this edge, they folded the 2 edges of the sandwich
Right.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Put them together and then machine sewed across it.
Yeah.
And then these where the border and the backing is the same fabric and this is the selvage edge. They literally just put the selvage edges
The selvage
raw
edge on that side, yeah. Here it's turned under.
on this edge because this would be a raw edge, not a selvage.
Yeah.
And
This is pretty interesting. They didn't even turn the selvages in or cut them off.
Yeah, I've not seen that before.
Which is fine because that fabric on the selvage is more sturdy.
It didn't fray at all.
So
It has never frayed.
You know.
Whereas actually this has frayed.
Yeah.
Where she's turned it in. So okay, let's go to the next one.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so here we have a 50 States embroidery quilt that your grandmother made for you.
On my other grandmother on my mom's side.
Yes.
Yes, she made this for me.
And so she had these 50 of these white piece of fabric that she somehow got the design on.
Probably iron on.
You think it's the iron on, and there's actually a couple of places where you can see it where it didn't wash out. Didn't you tell me you don't think this quilt was ever washed?
I've never washed it.
And it's only been lightly used as well. And when we examined it yesterday, we realized that this sashing, what is this type of fabric?
Double knit.
This double knit sashing is not pieced in. It's actually raw edge applique on top of the blocks with a double zigzag stitch.
Yep.
You don't really like this quilt, do you?
So I really like the States. I love the embroidery. I don't like double knit.
You don't like double knit
fabric.
I don't really like pastel colors, and this is very pastel colors. And we both kind of said, I wish she would have just taken the blocks and done like a solid color sashing and done it. like you'd normally do by piecing it in. But she did all 50 states.
Yep.
And I mean, that must have taken her a long time.
I would assume, yeah. There's the state flower and the name and the state shape and the year it became a state and where the capital is. And then there's this shading. That's actually where you can see the lines in the shading, which I think is really cool on all of these.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the state names are done in a different way.
Oh, yeah. So she hand quilted with kind of a little bit big stitch around
the state and underlined the state name.
And then in addition to that, she also tied it from the back.
Yeah, and this backing is weird. It's some sort of polyester something.
Yeah, it's like a fleece situation.
Fleecy, but not real thick like today's fleece.
And there was the holes in that side. There was a hole in the backing by the corner. And we were able to peer in.
Must be on the other side.
And see that it was polyester batting. This quilt is actually pretty thick. It's like a comforter.
It's a nice warm quilt. I used to have it when we had a spare bedroom with a twin bed in it. I used to put it on there so I could look at it. Because it's pretty. And it should get looked at.
What year do you think she made this or around?
Probably in the 80s, because it was right around when I got married. It might have been a wedding gift.
I like the embroidery. There's all 50 states in here, and it's 5
by 10
wide by 10 long, and then that explains why this sashing is 1.5 inches, and this looks like it's probably 4 inches.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the edge. I, for one, would not tie a quilt with the ties on the inside because I would not like the ties being on the inside. That would bother me.
So I can understand that, but I like what I do like about the ties on this side is you don't see them on the front. You don't even really notice they're there.
Yeah, but
I do like that.
You can put tacks in that you don't have to see.
Yeah.
Or that don't come off the back like this. They're just a tack.
Yeah.
And then the edge, I think it's called a knife blade edge. Either both sides are sewn in, just like the previous one. Mm-hmm. Both sides are turned in. And then
this one was zigzagged.
Yeah, and then she went over it with the zigzag stitch, the same zigzag stitch that she used.
What if she had a brand new machine with the brand new zigzag and she's like, ooh, I'm going to use the zigzag.
That's probably it. She probably wanted to use her brand new zigzag because when was that introduced?
Oh, I don't know, but I mean, before the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, she just wanted to use her zigzag stitch. This is a very interesting way to finish an edge, I feel like, to just turn the two edges in and zigzag
I think
stitch.
it's smart. You don't have to buy or make binding.
Yeah, we might be copying that on the channel later on one of my quilts. We might copy the idea. Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right.
Okay, so what is this?
This is Overall Sam.
Whose is it?
This belonged to my brother.
You have an older brother, 2 years older than you?
1.
Your grandmother made this.
This is my grandmother on my dad's side.
Overall Sam, which is a very classical, quintessential design.
Pattern. Yeah. They don't always look like this. There's a couple of different ways you can do Overall Sam. Sometimes he actually has overalls.
Obviously, the quilt was well loved.
Yeah.
This was made by your grandmother.
Yeah.
And she did make an interesting choice by making a pink quilt for a boy.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure the
60s maybe was, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, he's a baby. What does he care? Pink or whatever.
Well, usually the adults will still try to make it like that.
This is very interesting because you can see the blanket that's inside.
It seems like there was a binding at one time, which is now very deteriorated.
Yeah.
So that the edge is just flailing open.
The binding was put on by a machine.
Well, and it was pieced by machine too.
Yeah, I guess it was, wasn't it?
It was pieced by machine, and these were appliqued on by hand.
Yeah. And it's very tightly quilted. It's considering it's a blanket. You wouldn't have needed to quilt it this tight.
Yeah, she quilted it. She overkilled with the quilting.
Yeah.
But actually, when I saw this,
underkilled on the log cabin.
When I saw this for the first time, this diamond crisscross pattern, I liked it, and you do that a lot in my quilting.
Yeah, I like it too.
This quilt is deteriorating. We discussed yesterday. The only thing you could probably do with this is take like the best looking one and frame it.
That would be really nice.
Which would be this one or maybe this one.
I think the orange and black one, well...
I like a blue one though. This one and that one is almost the same. I like this one better.
I mean, it does have some deterioration here, but it would still be cute.
Look at this. This is not what color it originally was. See that? It was a lot pinker.
This was right in the middle, so probably these three are in the worst shape, which is weird.
Yeah, because he stuck his arm over the quilt.
Yeah, but why these two and not that one?
Feet. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know, but it's
pretty... Like this one is in good shape.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so cute.
Yeah, but it's falling apart.
Yeah.
Mainly just the edge. I mean, the structure.
63, that would make it 60 years old.
60 years old, yeah. And it's been in your trunk for how many years?
Oh.
Why do you have it instead of your brother?
I mean, I don't think he would ever be interested in having a quilt.
I know, but why?
He might not even know that I have it.
You just send him a text message. He'll be like, I've been looking for that. Cool. So let's go. Let's do your Sunbonnet Sue's.
Okay.
Let's do them both at the same time.
Okay.
All right. So we're now here with Mrs. Sunbonnet Susan, and your that same grandmother made one for you and one for your sister.
Right.
But you do not know which one is which. And they're both the same.
But this one is in worse shape.
Meaning what? Maybe she gave it to the younger.
So I feel like maybe Kelly had this one because she would have used it longer. Because we got them at the same time, even though we're not very close in age.
What's interesting about this quilt to me, first of all, this material is not quilter's cotton at all.
It is not 100% cotton, for sure.
This is the type of material that bed sheets are made out of, and it is not fun to sew with. And it has come apart in many places. You can see
polyester.
The polyester batting on the inside.
Yeah.
The second thing that's interesting is she turned edged appliqued these on with machine, and then she went over that with a blanket stitch by hand.
Yeah.
So you're like, why go over them with a blanket stitch if you machine applique them on? Why machine applique them on if you're about to just go over them with a blanket stitch? You can just do one or the other.
Yeah.
Maybe she machine applique them on to make them more durable, because that would be more durable.
Yeah.
But she the kids are going to use it. She wanted the look of hand applique, so she went over it with that.
Yeah. I was always going to fix them, but you know, it's in such bad shape. And it was machine quilted, and it's not that nice a fabric, and it's like, oh.
This one is in good shape.
Well, this one I probably did.
You think?
Yeah. And then I realized how much work it was going to be.
Well, it would be too much work, and also some of this material is so paper thin at this point that you can't even...
Well, and some of it's just gone.
Yeah, it's gone or it's paper thin and you can't even do that. And then how was this edge done? This edge was done by... Yeah, turning the edges in and sewing across it with a straight stitch. And
she machine quilted it, and she would have done it in the day before you had walking feet.
Yeah. This isn't the neatest job I've ever seen.
It's really not.
Like,
it's kind of slapped together.
Yeah, I would probably blush before showing that on YouTube.
You know, I mean, when we got them, we were like 12 and 6. So what did we know? We didn't care. The overall Sam was made for a baby and used when he was a baby, and these were used when we were children. So that would be in much worse shape if it was used as much as these were. Because these were on our bed. We always shared a room. So these were on our beds, and they would have been washed. Look how light they are. They would have been washed. We definitely sat on them.
Cool.
This is definitely used more than that one.
Meaning the younger person had
I think so.
You didn't want to put your name. Maybe you switched back and forth. Maybe you didn't even keep track of whose was whose.
That's entirely possible, because how would you know unless your name was on it if that you got yours back after laundering?
Yeah, that's why when you made me and Danny quilts, you put our names on it. Because we would fight over whose was who. I knew which one was mine all along.
Well,
Anyway.
I'm guessing we didn't fight over them. I don't know.
Because they were exactly the same.
Yeah, true.
All right. Let's go to the next one. So this is the triangle quilt. And this is the card that it comes with, which reads, Grandma C made and gave this quilt to Elle and I for a wedding present with 5 gallons of honey, 1 saw, and an apple box full of canned food, 1933. Signed Elle.
5 gallons of honey is a lot of honey.
Yes, but honey never goes bad, so they could have kept it forever.
I know that, but it's still a lot of honey.
Also a saw and an apple box full of canned goods.
That meant apple butter, strawberry jam,
Homemade goods and home canned goods.
Home canned and jarred in mason jars.
So this quilt is made of these tiny little triangles.
Yeah, they're not that tiny.
These are pretty small considering that this whole quilt is hand pieced. And didn't we say they were done by multiple different people worked on it?
Well, we guessed since it was a wedding gift that it would have been done at a quilting bee, but I mean, we don't know
Probably
that.
at a quilting bee. And the triangles are sewn together. It looks as though they're all done in one row, and then the rows were sewn together.
Yeah.
Rather than any other way of constructing
Well,
it.
that could have been done in hexagons.
Yeah, you could have made hexes out of it and assembled it that way. I think that would have been harder. No. And then it was hand quilted.
Yeah. Inside of each and every triangle.
And that's again something that was wholly unnecessary because it's not batting in there.
There's no batting.
Yeah. Is it just, well, there's another layer in there.
There is another layer. Maybe that's a blanket.
Either a blanket
Either that or a piece of flannel.
Like a piece of some type of thick fabric.
Here it looks like flannel.
Yeah, so again, the quilting that they did was very extra.
Yeah, it's a blanket. Yeah, they wouldn't have needed that much quilting.
This has a binding.
Which is sewn on by machine.
The binding is sewn on by machine.
After the whole quilt was done by hand and hand quilted, they did the binding by machine.
Yeah, and they sewed the binding onto the back, and then they flipped it over to the front and top stitched it down, which is a method that I use. Mm-hmm. And also, they did not miter the corners of it.
Right. It's also single. You know how we fold ours over and sew it on and then fold it over? This was done flat, folded around, folded under, and sewn down.
I've done that before.
Well, you get more, if you fold it and sew it on, you have 2 layers of fabric there for your binding. This way you only have one.
But I don't need all that.
I mean, this quilt was obviously used.
This one was.
So you want more,
Yeah.
But
most of my quilts are
considering the fact that it was obviously used, it's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, 1933.
I mean, there's places like this one, this fabric is gone.
Yeah, obviously.
And this is just, threadbare.
Some of the fabrics were nicer than
this is another quilt that Chris O'Neill would like. This
triangle right here is pieced.
Is it?
And it's pieced by machine, I think. Look at can you see the seam from there?
Mm-hmm. Or else it could be a piece off of a shirt.
Yeah. So it could be cut from a piece that was pieced.
Yeah.
There's piecing here on that triangle.
Yeah.
So some of the triangles are pieced themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right.
What is this?
This is your older brother's baby quilt.
Did you make this?
Yeah.
You fussy cutted each?
I fussy cut it. However, if I'm not mistaken, it came probably already in a grid pretty close to this size.
And then you pieced these Irish chain nine patches.
It's just a 9 patch, yeah.
And then you hand quilted it.
I did hand quilt it, yeah.
Which surprises me because in my previous video, you talk about how much you hate hand quilting.
Well, it is a baby quilt. And you notice there's 2 teddy bears here, and those are more complicated than a plain old heart.
Yeah.
And there's 6 hearts and only 2 teddy bears. It was fun.
I mean, this one's not terribly vintage. He was born in 88.
Yeah, that's not very vintage. But I mean, it's not like it was made yesterday. And it is hand quilted. So, this fabric isn't 100% cotton. This is muslin, but this isn't.
And I feel
And
like
it could have had a little more quilting along the border.
it doesn't matter. I feel like the batting is polyester.
Oh, most likely. Yeah.
And then this binding
This
must
is-
have been bias tape.
This is bias tape, yeah.
Yeah, because you
and I just went right around the corner.
you did a curve around the corner. Well, you can with bias tape.
Yeah. I'm sure I knew nothing about mitered corners or anything like that.
No, because you didn't miter this either.
Mm-mm. Most of the time, I don't miter the corners when I do binding or borders either, even to this day.
You said most of the time. Do you ever? I'd never do that.
I don't think I have ever done it.
I almost never put a border on my quilts.
Yeah, you're not a border kind of guy, but I like borders because you can make your quilt bigger with borders.
If I want a bigger quilt, I make a bigger quilt.
But it's an easier way. This is a lot easier than making more blocks.
Okay.
And it adds to the design, plus it makes me feel safe.
By that
I'm all
logic,
fenced in and safe.
in prison. Yeah, you're safe in prison.
I don't feel like I'm in prison.
By that logic, you could make your quilt and then be like, oh, I want it twice as big. Just add a bigger and bigger and bigger border.
And there are quilts like that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I don't like that. If I want a bigger quilt, I make a bigger quilt.
That's all right. You can do that.
Okay.
Not much to say about this one.
Okay, here we have your butterfly quilt.
This one was from my grandmother on my dad's side. And a story that I got was that it was a friendship quilt, but usually friendship quilts are signed, and none of these are signed. Plus, they really look like they were done all by the same person. Like all the eyes are in the same place. I don't know.
Could have been a pattern, right? Couldn't it have been a template that everybody followed?
Maybe.
Because they just copied it and...
Or by friendship, maybe everybody gave her some fabric.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
This is the same way where these are machine appliqued on, turned edge applique with a top stitch by machine, and then that covered in a hand embroidered blanket stitch.
Yep. So it makes you think that my grandmother did it, because it would be the same as the Sunbonnet Sue's and Overall Sam's.
That was her calling card.
Yeah.
And then we can also tell you that this muslin is not actually muslin at all. It's actually feed sack.
It is. You can see there was one where you could see the flower, F-L-O-U.
Is it not here? Yeah, right there. F-L-O-U.
Yeah, there it is. F-L-O-U.
Right, so we know that in the olden days, they would take the feed sacks and sew with them to make quilts. And therefore, the manufacturers started printing on them. Flowery designs and different prints and stuff. But however, these are the original recipe feed sacks.
Yeah.
Or I don't know about before they started printing on, but these are not printed on.
Yeah.
These just straight up say flower.
Yeah.
And
they might have had a way to wash it and get that out. This also reminds me of the pink that's on the Overall Sam. I wonder if it's the same pink.
And there's no batting in here either, is there?
I don't think there's any batting in here.
There is no batting. So here again, the backing is
feels
feed sack.
like the same as the feed sack.
It is, because we saw, I'll show it on the screen, but we saw where it had words printed on it yesterday.
Okay.
So she didn't need to do all this quilting. This is quilted pretty tight in here.
Right in here, but then in here, there's no quilting other than around the butterfly.
Yeah, she quilted around each butterfly. So
Yeah.
she just wanted to do this quilting.
But look how tiny the stitches are.
They're tiny stitches and they're tight together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it goes around and around and around.
Well, they're circles.
Yeah.
She just did a circle, a circle, a circle.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's a circle. Okay. I was doing loop-de-loops, but you're right. It's a circle.
The edge is the same thing again, where she turned the edge in, only this time she finished it by hand.
It's like quilted right along the edge.
The majority of these quilts actually don't even have a binding at all.
The one with the triangles was the only one with binding.
Was it the only one? Other than the one you made?
Oh, Overall Sam had binding.
Oh, yeah, it had deteriorated. None of the other ones had binding.
I don't think so.
See, I often don't put binding. I come up with some other method, and I always think, like, this is a newfangled idea that we're going to change, and we're not going to do binding like
I'm
I always did.
guessing there's nothing new under the sun in quilting.
Well, definitely in the olden days, they were doing random ideas too. I mean,
I don't know how old this is, which would be another one to get appraised so you could figure out how old it is.
it probably would be easy to appraise because
I mean, you could tell how old this is, but somebody could have had that around their house for a long time before they used it.
oh yeah, look at all the words on this one. Can you read it? Redfield?
Maybe.
Redfield, is that a city? Roller? Redfield? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely feed sack though, for sure.
Feed sack, flour sack, something.
Wait a minute, how did you get this quilt into your possession?
My grandmother gave it to me.
Did she just give you
So probably what happened was my grandmother told me about it, and then when she passed away, I took them.
Oh.
That's probably what happened.
That's how I'm going to come into possession of it someday. Yeah, I mean, if this were to deteriorate, it would be cool to frame a couple of them, especially ones with the words of the feed sack.
Yeah, that green and yellow one is pretty cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, you'd want one with the feed sack that you could see.
I feel like even some of the butterflies might be the flowery feed sack.
It's possible. I don't know. This one, I don't know. I guess the pattern wore off. You can kind of see some dots.
Yeah, and it just looks like a pickle. It just looks like there's a pickle on there.
There's not even any antenna left.
Nope, it's just a pickle.
It's just a pickle.
Okay, let's get
Friendship
up.
pickle.
This is on my dad's side. This
Yes.
is actually the only one you've showed me that's from my dad's side.
Yep.
Were there a lot of quilters on his side?
His grandmother, his dad's mom, sewed a lot of clothes and things. As far as I know, she didn't make a lot of quilts. She gave this to me. I think she just gave me the squares, the 9 patches, and I added these, but it might have been the top. Remember? Memory is rubbish.
So she gave you a UFO.
Yes, or it could have been a whip.
It wasn't a whip because anything that's that old that she's giving away is not a work in progress.
I really like the fabrics. I feel like the fabrics are from the 40s. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, but that's kind of how, like, the fabrics can be old, but the quilt's not actually that old at all.
Yes, the quilt is right from like 1988, 85, 87, somewhere in there. I don't know if it was like right after we got married or right before.
These?
So I would say right somewhere between 85 and 90.
Okay, wait, hold on, because these are hand-pieced.
They are hand-pieced.
So you didn't
So,
hand-piece them.
yeah, and they're hand-pieced to this piece. So she gave me the quilt top without this. Because I added these, I wanted it to be a little longer.
She gave you a flimsy.
She gave me a flimsy.
You put the border around it.
I added that, and I added the border. And then when I had this border on, I got this back because it matches. It's just flannel.
So you still use this quilt, don't you?
I use this quilt because it's just the right size to nap under, and it is so snuggly.
And you hand quilted it.
I did hand quilt it. Yeah.
And you hand quilted
just an X through this and a shamrock because this is an Irish chain.
And this border.
And this border.
Which is so crinkly.
I know, this is the best thing I love about quilts, that crinkle. I love the crinkle. And then the binding is bias tape. I had made it and given it back to Dad's father, and then he gave it back to me.
When he downsized to move into a nursing home and all that.
Yeah.
Cool, so that was it.
That's it.
So that's going to be it for the trunk show. Those are all the quilts that I will inherit someday.
Yes. And now you know what's the deal, as much as I can remember, which is not much. Maybe sometime we can take a couple of those to an appraiser. And they can tell us when the fabrics were made. Yeah,
and that'll be one thing. There's just not that much you can ever figure out about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I realized that when watching Chris O'Neill.
And I don't know if you noticed, but none of the quilts were labeled.
None of the quilts were labeled.
As close as they came was 1 or 2 of them had a little card in that my grandmother had written on.
Yeah, an index card.
Yeah, like I could put a little card in here and write on this or sew something on. But if that quilt, if any of those old quilts, like the log cabin, I don't know. Was that made by my grandmother? By her mother? By her mother? It might be kind of fun to know that.
These belong to us and we don't even know the whole story.
But that's what I'm saying. If it was if it was, if it was signed, made by Jane Doe, 19 whatever, 18 whatever, then you would know. You would know that was part of your family, that this quilt was given to somebody and given to somebody and given to somebody, and now you have it.
I at least filmed a video of me making it.
That's true.
So if people ever want to know.
As long as the technology for watching YouTube stays around, we'll be able to know.
Yeah, what lasts longer? The fibers of the quilt before it deteriorates and decomposes?
Or YouTube.
Or the internet server where the video is saved?
Because in 2023, if the world is even around, people will be saying, can you believe they used to do this on YouTube?
Well, it's 2023 now.
21, 23.
You tried to go to some future date and you landed on 2023. Okay, so I have to go film the B-roll footage for these display since
I have to go take a nap because this is my napping quilt.
All right, so that's all for today's video. Thank you for coming to Dave's Craft Room. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel, and please come again. Yeah, so on this edge, the person folded the two edges over, put them together.
By hand or by machine?
No, they folded them over. What did they do? I don't think we said what they did, right? Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right, go ahead.
But hold on, I have to do it again. This quilt is made of these tiny little rectangles, almost. I mean,
triangles.
Hand.
I haven't counted them. You know how much I like to count. I'll be counting them.
Well,
I'll put a little number on here. Did you read this, 1933?
Yes, I read the card. Let me finish my sentence. I've already said Danny's name on there. That should be a sale. Do you know the word butterfly comes from flutterby?
Does it?
Said wrong. Yeah, flutterby.
Does it?
Butterfly. Yes.
What?
Butterfly.
That can't be true. Ooh, I
flutterby.
just stuck my finger in there.
A butterfly flutterby.
It does seem like flutterby is better than butterfly. Butterfly?
Because what's a butter? What does butter have to do with them?
Why is the butter flying?
Let's just get the other one.
You didn't do the...
Oh.
I wanted to say 1,000 years from now.
So 3023.
That's 10,000 years from now.
No, it's not. It's like 1,000 years in the future.
Yes. Okay, 1,000. Okay, so in 3023,